ready for the next battle. Tekken 8! New challenger!
Come and get some, I dare you.
Martial Law!
Martial Law is a talented martial artist who is the longtime friend and sparring partner of Paul Phoenix. Prior to the first King of Iron Fist tournament, Law was working in a Chinatown restaurant in San Francisco to support himself and his family. He dreamed of opening his own dojo, and entered the tournament with the goal of winning the prize money to realize his dream. Though Martial did not win the tournament, he was able to open his own dojo at some point in the 2 years that followed. Unfortunately, when Martial was out one day, Baek Do-san attacked his dojo, wrecking it and injuring his students. Martial learned that Baek was responsible and entered the King of Iron Fist tournament to avenge his students. In the years following the second tournament, Martial trained his son, Forrest, in martial arts. Martial was a protective father, and forbade his son from entering competitions outside of the dojo, even as an adult. Paul visited every few months during this time to spar with Martial. One day, while Martial was supervising the building of a new dojo, Paul drew Forrest into training with him, and suggested that Forrest enter the upcoming King of Iron Fist Tournament 3. Forrest decided to enter, despite Martial's restrictions. Martial was furious when he found out that Forrest had left for the tournament. Forrest did not win the tournament, and left home at some point during the 2 years that followed. Though Martial had successfully established not only his dojo but a nationwide fast food chain called Martial China, he ended up losing a franchise war against a competing restaurant chain and had to declare bankruptcy. Unable to cope with his failure, he became depressed and spent his days at home in a drunken haze. However, when Martial received an invitation to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 4, his fighting spirit renewed, and he trained intensely. Within a month, he was at top physical form, and entered the tournament. Despite his efforts, Martial did not win the tournament, and didn't even have the money to return to the USA. He had to take up work as a day laborer at a famous Chinese restaurant. To compound his woes, he received a phone call informing him that Forrest had caused a serious accident while joyriding on Paul's motorbike. Martial had no choice but to enter the King of Iron Fist Tournament 5, aiming to cover the damages and hospital bills from Forrest's accident with the prize money. However, his illegal employment in Japan was detected during the tournament, and he was deported back to the USA. With the due date for repaying the damages caused by Forrest's accident rapidly approaching, Martial found himself out of ideas, until Paul invited him to team up with him in the King of Iron Fist Tournament 6. Figuring that he had never been successful alone, Martial deciding that working as part of a team might be enough to win the tournament and the prize money. Realizing that bringing another person onto the team would increase their chances even further, Martial invited the champion boxer Steve Fox to team up with them as well. Unfortunately, their efforts did not win them the tournament. Ever preoccupied with paying off Forrest's debts, Martial did not realize that many of his students had quit his dojo. Needing someone to take over while he dealt with things, he asked Paul if he knew anyone who would be suitable to run his dojo. Paul offered to run it himself, but, certain that Paul would cause the dojo to go bust in half a day, Martial politely refused. Martial put the word out that strong fighters should try out for the job. Several challengers appeared, but none were up to Martial's standard. When Martial learned of an excellent martial artist in rural China, Martial set off to challenge him, hoping he might be a suitable dojo master. Martial usually gets along well with his friends and family. Martial has been friends with Paul Phoenix since Tekken and have shown to not only friends, but fighting partners also. Martial also got along with Steve Fox when they teamed up in Tekken 6. Law also likes to joke or make fun of his friends. For example, in his Tekken 6 ending, Martial puts laxatives in his special recipe pizza, and feeds it to Paul and Steve. Also, Martial also likes to make fun of Paul's inability to perform a somersault kick at times. It's also shown that Martial Law is a very good martial arts teacher. He has taught his son very well, and in some cases, Forrest performed moves that his father could not. Martial also taught Li Chaolan some of his moves before the events of Tekken. It's also shown that Law cares deeply not only for his family, but his dojo students also. After he finds out that Baek Do-san attacked his students, he would go find Baek and would successfully avenge his students. However, Martial is also quick-tempered at times. In his Tekken 4 ending, he causes a brawl in his restaurant only because someone criticized his food harshly. He also became angry when he found out that his son joined the third King of the Iron Fist tournament, but with good reason. It also seemed Law and Paul were not that good of friends in Tekken 4, since they looked to be rather distant from each other, possibly due to the fact that Martial was still holding a grudge against him for allowing his son to participate in the third tournament. However, it appears their friendship has been revived, since in Tekken 6, Law and Paul would team up along with Steve Fox. In Tekken 6's scenario campaign, Law is depicted to have a strong sense of justice, as shown as when he stands up to Kazuya stating he gets a thrill out of stopping egomaniacs. The same goes for Azazel, who he tells that there's no place in this world for a monster like him. Conversely, however, when encountered as a boss, many characters show clear disdain for his Ponzi schemes and antics and urge him to try to get a decent job for once. In the Tekken universe, Martial Law is a formidable fighter, having participated in multiple King of Iron Fist tournaments. He has a rivalry with Paul Phoenix, another Tekken fighter, and the two often engage in intense battles. Despite his brash personality, Martial Law has a strong sense of honor and is respected by his fellow fighters for his skill and determination.